Alright, so our last bit of prep before we get into the actual argument. Now this will be a really short video. So we've already discussed there's three major pieces of prep, right? One is to understand the distinction between existing in reality and existing in the understanding, and seeing where God falls on that even for the atheist. Understanding that Anselm's definition of God is unique, right? It's a little different than what we're used to seeing. We're not saying he's omnipotent and omniscient and omnibenevolent. We're saying God's the greatest conceivable being. And so the greatest conceivable being might also be omnipotent, omniscient, and omnibenevolent, and so on. It might have all of the same characteristics as the Christian God, but that's not super important for Anselm. Even if he can just prove the existence of the greatest conceivable being, that would be a phenomenal task. Okay, so the final piece is understanding how Anselm thinks about existence. So he thinks existence is a great-making property. So what does that mean? Well, it means for any object, it would be greater if it also existed in reality instead of just in our understanding. So go back here to our diagram. Essentially, Anselm's claiming that anything from this side of the list, right, if it moved over into the black space, it would be greater than it is right now. Right? So if the fountain of youth didn't just exist in our understanding, but also existed in reality, then it would be greater than it in fact is. Same with unicorns, same with the Ford Focus 3000. Right? If they could exist on both sides of the diagram, they would be greater than if they just existed on the white side of the diagram. So for the fountain of youth, unicorns, Santa, so on and so forth, everything that exists in our understanding, it'd be greater if it existed in reality. Now, Anselm just takes this for granted. Right? Existence is great making. But think to yourself for a second, is this always true? Well, there's some weird applications here. Right? So think about things like diseases or cancer. Does Anselm really want to say cancer's over here, it exists in our understanding, it's also greater when it exists in reality? That seems counterintuitive, right? It seems like diseases and cancer get worse because they actually exist and don't just stay in the understanding. The world's gotten the world's got the world has less value in it now because these things exist. Right? These things bring badness into the world. So why wouldn't it be better if those things remain in our understanding? Maybe in terms of diseases and cancer, existence is a worse-making property. So this is something we have to worry about, but I think Anselm would just respond by saying, well, think about cancer in isolation, right? Don't think about its negative effects on us. Think about just cancer itself. And now think, what type of cancer would be greater, right? One that just existed in the understanding, or one that existed not just in our understanding, but also in reality. So you have to make sure you isolate cancer or diseases from the bad effects they have on us, and just think about the object itself, right? Would that object be better if it also just existed? So that might not be entirely satisfying, but I think that's something that Anselm would have to say, right? So even for these bad things, uh, for the bad things, it would be better if they existed. Not better for us, but better for those things. Okay, so that's the final piece. You need to understand the difference between existing and the understanding in reality, know that God's the greatest conceivable being, that existence is a great making property. And that's it for our prep. Next video, we'll get into the actual argument.